Where are we?
We're in Green Meadow Woods, Cwbran, top half of Cwbran, on the eastern escarpments of Mynydd May. I love that saying. A quartz conglomerate, yeah. It's 350 million year old seabed with quartz pieces in it that date to 500 million years ago, that were created in a volcano. Has been estimated it was on the edge of Eurasia, somewhere down by Africa, before the Teutonic plates, I think they call them, were pushed about, and it ended up here in Cwbran on the side of Mynydd May.
Wow.
Yeah?
Where are we?
We're in Green Meadow Woods, Cwbran, top half of Cwbran, on the eastern escarpments of Mynydd May. I love that saying. A nun wrote that in a book about Lantana Mountain, called this the eastern escarpments of Mynydd May, the mountain of stone. So we have this linear construction, double flank linear construction, a wall, yeah, face both sides, look, nice and smooth, chop chop, yeah. It runs from the houses at just the other side of those trees for 326 metres up the woods, yeah. Turns left on a big sweeping bend, goes to the edge of the woods over there and stops where the houses start again.
Wow.
So the housing has ended it. Yeah? I don't know how much further it went each way. I'm still trying to establish that. Yeah? So, the construction of the wall. As far as we can ascertain, they cut the ground, levelled it, and then placed the stones on one by one. They're generally 2 rows of stones, unless you come across the occasional stone like this one that covers the whole width, or nearly the whole width. Now these stones weigh a lot. You can imagine that stone there, like, it's got to be a ton, isn't it?
It's as big as the other one, isn't it?
Maybe 3/4 of a ton, but it's heavy, isn't it? So it's going to take some moving. They move hundreds of them, literally hundreds of them. Come on, we'll walk up the wall, I'll show you. You can see this bank sticking out of the ground, that's all the wall. You scrape away the surface, you find stone after stone after stone. Great big ones, huge beech trees growing on top. Beech trees love stone. They like growing on top of stone, but it does give them shallow roots. But yeah, it goes on. We've done archaeological dig after archaeological dig on here, and we discovered that where we're walking now is a medieval footpath.
Any coins found?
We only dug a small part of the footpath because footpaths go on a long way, like, you know.
Yeah.
You can see more of the wall here. 42 inches wide again. Not all conglomerate. Occasionally you've got chunks of sandstone in there. You know? We also discovered that the footpath is lower than this ground over here.
Oh yeah.
But we also discovered by digging both sides that this is not defensive. This is not a castle wall. This is not a wall to defend anything. Because if it was, there would be a ditch next to it. And a substantial ditch. And there's no ditch. So this is not built for defensive purposes. That's one of the most important things about it, because if it's not defensive, then what is it for? And we have no evidence that it was much higher. We suspect it may have only been about this high. I have evidence of stone being robbed off it, but it all seems to be pretty much the same level.
Why is that then? Is it marking out like the NASCAR lines out in South America, where they just they're not very high, are they?
Possibly there's a reeves system in north of Devon, isn't there? Where they're marking out the land with rows of stones. Possibly, but this is a bit more elaborate than the reeves system in Devon. This isn't just stones piled up, this is a built construction that's faced both sides. So it's a little bit more elaborate than that. It's possibly not very high because it's just marking an area of ground. It's an enclosure, so it's just simply saying this is the edge of the enclosure. It's interesting there's a footpath up on the outside, because it suggests the footpath's going somewhere. We've got a footpath. Where's it going? Well, we carry on.
You picked the right route there, Mike.
Yeah.
The footpath route.
Even after all this time. Yeah. Now we got a preliminary date that it's 2nd century. So it's 1800 years old and it's still in place.
And the width is consistent, isn't it?
The widths are consistent. Not only is the width consistent here, it's consistent on other sites.
Right, okay.
As far as Cardiff or Wentwood,
Yeah.
it's consistent with, there's a wall up on just below Tumbala. That's the same width. The width has got to be important. There's got to be some significance to that 42 inches. You know, whether it's an Iron Age measurement or something to do.
It's not anything to do with a cubit, is it? It's a biblical, it's mentioned in the Bible, isn't it, cubit?
Yeah.
I don't know what it is though, 20 odd inches, is it?
Yeah, it's not a problem. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows exactly what a length of cubit is, yeah.
Carries on up here. We've done a couple of trenches over the wall right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
What do they show?
we understood the construction of it, dug down the side of it. We must have opened up maybe 10 or 15 trenches in this woods, and we found nothing except the wall.
Except the wall.
Except building, we found no finds, no pot, no coins, nothing. Oh, we found a musket ball once, and that was it. So this was not built by people who had possessions, which is interesting.
Yeah,
Because the less you find, the older the site.
I got him.
Because they didn't have pockets then. The first dig we done on here.
Oh, there's the wall again.
Yeah, the first dig we ever done, I knew the wall come up to here, and it kind of disappears into the ground. You can't find it. And then I know it went that way as well. So I figured, right here, there's got to be a corner, isn't there?
Yeah.
So we put a trench right across there. No wall. Which is a bit of disheartening. So the archaeologists who were working with us, they said, well, we'll carry on the trench down our way and see what we hit. So we carried on the trench there and we hit the wall underground, yeah? And then we trenched across that way as well, and we discovered that it wasn't a corner, there was a huge sweeping curve.
Ah.
Which is interesting because not everybody built in curves.
No.
The Romans didn't build in curves. They liked corners. But the Iron Age people like curves.
For the Druids.
Yeah, they're the Iron Age people, the tribes. They had roundhouses, not square buildings.
That's
They
right,
were
yeah.
round ones. So curves are important. And then there's another factor: the curve makes it much more difficult to build. It's not a thing that it doesn't make it easier, the curve. If you want to build enclose a space, it's much easier if you've got corners. You know, it's much easier to build a right angle than it is a big sweeping bend. Well, we got a big sweeping bend. The wall runs along here. Interesting, yeah. Goes up and down. A lot of stones robbed from here by a farmer.
Farmer robbing it again.
Yeah,
What they rob it for then?
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? If it's on your land and you need it, you use it.
Well, they have done for millennia by the look of it.
Yeah, of course it
I was going around Caerphilly Castle on Monday and they apparently built Castle Coke out of Caerphilly Castle.
The wall runs along here. Now in there's something really interesting in there. Because,
Oh, that's the wall.
yeah, you're on the wall there. That's the edge of the wall. There's the other edge, look. Here. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
face bit of stone there.
When you say faced, you just mean chiselled off, do you?
Yeah, smoothed off.
Smoothed off.
Flat. Come in, but yeah.
Oh yeah, smooth.
See
It's like a concrete block.
Under
Isn't it?
there. Yeah. Over by there. Yeah. And right round there, there's a circle of stones lying in the ground. Big ones. There's about 8 or 9 of them. They're all scattered around there, as if they've been pushed over. Who's been doing all? A big stone under there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Now we never worked out what that was. We dug it, we uncovered a big area, and it looked like it was almost like a spiral of large stones lying on the ground. We had no idea what it was for.
What year did you carry out that dig?
That was about 10 years ago, that one. The last one we done in here was 8 or 9 years ago, I think. Yeah. So that was and then disappeared. It stopped. It's gone. This is the end of the wall. We thought it was anyway.
I thought it was.
Yeah. And then we realised it isn't the end of the wall. It's going that way. There's a little bit missing here. And then it runs up here. Yeah. It's going off at a slightly different angle. So the cocker through there. Here it is again. Running through here. This is really interesting. We put a big trench over this. It's a really interesting spot.
A bit of water.
Yeah, there's the walls running through here. This is really interesting because if you look up there, you can see there's a stream bed running down through here. See the dip in the ground?
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's running straight at the wall. Yeah? Now that's a problem for a wall. Because the water is one of the things that'll take a wall down. Water and wind.
Yeah.
The two enemies of any wall, yeah? But when we dug this, we discovered the stream bed. It was like a little channel of silt. Water, like, you know, where it had been running for years. And you get like a little sand deposit in that sort of shape. And over that, the wall was running, but there was one stone, it's in the ground here somewhere, that was this shaped, like a little arch bridge, and they channeled the stream through there.
Oh no.
So it went straight through the wall, it ran across here, down to where the dip in the ground is there, yeah, and then down now into that ravine. Yeah, it's all lined with stone, tons of stone for this little stream to run down there. Got to the bottom of the ravine, there's a square construction, 3 meters square, and it's got corners.
A well?
Yeah, it's only a meter deep. and out of the middle of it, there's 3 springs bubbling up.
Ah.
Right? So you would have had a metre deep, 3 metres square body of water at the bottom of a ravine. Another channel running in that way, so there's 5 springs feeding this little square swimming pool. So we know it's not for animals because it's at the bottom of a ravine. You don't put animals down the bottom of a ravine to water. We know it's not for people to drink because it's too big to cover. You've got to cover the drinking water for people, otherwise all sorts of things die in it. Birds and stuff, you know, and it becomes septic. So we don't know what it's for. We only can imagine it's ritualistic.
Yeah, like the Baptists.
It could be a Baptist pool, or it could be something even earlier, a site of worship. What's interesting about it is the wall carries on along there, yeah. The well's down there, or the, yeah. So it's down in that ravine, walls enclosing it in. There might be an entrance through the wall, but there, we're not certain. And then there's this. Yeah. It gets even stranger now. Yeah, it's really weird. Yeah. Right? So you've got this medieval footpath where it's not here. You've got this 42-inch wall running all the way down there. It runs till the comes to the end of the woods, just over there where the housing has destroyed it. Yeah. 42 inches wide, same as the wall down there. 326 metres of it to get to that point. Right. Yeah. And then there's this. Now, it looks like a pile of stone, doesn't it? But what it is a bank that runs across there, and in a kind of square, semi-curve, goes around that way. Yeah. And this bank creates a level plateau of ground, which is that there, up there. Yeah? And this bank is revetted with stone. So these are plates lying down on the side of the bank to hold the soil in place. So you keep your plateau. And there's not one of these, there's 2 of them. There's another one up there, like that. Yeah? And then round those 2 plateaus are these marker stones. I'll show you them. Come up here. There's one. There's about 8 of them.
That was fun.
I don't know if I put my hand behind you, you can gauge.
Some of them are massive. There's 8 of them. They're about 1,500 feet apart. I think that's a measurement. It's a long time since I measured it. So they're all roughly spaced right round in a big oval around these 2 plateaus. Yeah?
Is there something oval here then?
Right.
Yeah.
So
Can you see it like the
initially
like
the very first dig we done in the woods, I was always a bit suspicious about this area, right? And I was the one lucky enough to decide where we were putting trenches. So I said to them, let's have a trench by ear. Let's see what's by ear. This looks really strange. A bank there, all stone, revetting it. What's this?
Yeah.
What's here? I thought there might be a building here, like, you know, because it made sense that if you're making a flat area and you're going to hold the soil in, then you put a building on it. Yeah? So we've done a little trench here, and all we found was a fire. A little hearth where someone had placed stones around it and had a little fire in it. And then we discovered that coming off the fire, there was a cut, what the archaeologists call a cut. So when you dig down through the soil, you can see someone's cut into the soil, cut a trench by the side of the hole you've dug. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you can see the earth's been disturbed. And it was a trench running like that in a curve over here. In this longer trench we had here. So we thought that was really strange. But we came to the end of that dig, so we couldn't investigate any further. But in the little hearth of fire, there was charcoal. So I got a chunk of that,
Wow.
and we sent it off to Cardiff to be tested, carbon dated. And it came out that they were roughly saying it was somewhere around 1600 that fire was built. Yeah, about 400 years ago.
Yeah.
So that was that. That same dig, we found a musket ball in the well down there, which was about the same date as this fire. So we couldn't conclude anything from that other than someone in 1600 had a fire by here and possibly shot a musket up
For his dinner.
there because that musket ball landed in water, landed in the well.
Yeah.
And it wasn't damaged, you could tell by the musket ball, it hadn't hit anything. So it must have gone up in the air and landed in water, because even the impact of hitting the floor, there wasn't a dent on it.
Yeah.
Unless someone, there was a fire indent on it, so we knew it'd been fired.
Fired, yeah.
But we knew it hadn't hit anything.
Yeah.
So we couldn't do any more of that year. Then the following year we came back here with some different archaeologists and some new funding, and we decided, right, we're going to work out what this trench is and what this is, and we're going to see if there's a building here or something, because we knew there was these marker stones around it, and we knew that the bank was there and it'd been revetted and they'd made these plateaus, so there must be something here, isn't there? So what we done, we opened the trench there, and from here across to here, and then round here in this huge semicircle. We quartered the whole area and we went down. I mean, and that was we had about 12 diggers here. We had 3 archaeologists, yeah, and we went down with a fine tough comb through the soil, little bit at a time, inch at a time. Took us about a week.
Oh.
Yeah, and we got down to what they call the natural, which is a mal. It's a kind of compressed clay, which is mal is like half stone, half clay. Yeah, and you know that's been there since the Ice Age. Yeah.
Has that stone been carved over there?
Well, hang on.
I'm jumping ahead of you, am I?
So we get down, and in here we find all sorts of stones scattered everywhere. You know, we go down and find all sorts of stones roughly scattered everywhere in the whole area. But here we find 4 stones that are placed like this, creating a little kist in the centre. And what it is, and 3 Bronze Age specialists confirmed this is the centre of a Bronze Age kist. And this plateau was built to put a Bronze Age mound on. And the central bit was where they placed their little funerary ashes in a little jar. And that cut was when someone robbed it in 1600.
This would have been a burial site.
This is a burial mound. And this is a huge burial mound. This would have been 15 foot tall of stone,
Right.
20 foot across. So like you're up there somewhere of a mound of stone, yeah? And it's 20 foot across and it's a huge oval of stone.
And that would have been of someone of importance.
Oh, massively
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
But not only was this here, there's another one over there. And that's what these 2 plateaus were about. They were to put Bronze Age burial mounds on. So we're Bronze Age burials now. We're back sort of 3,500 years ago. 1,500 BC. Yeah? Which makes another mystery, because archaeologists like this, every time you answer a question, yeah, it gives you 10 more. You can't just answer the question and think, oh, that's it, we know now. We can go home, because it don't work like that, because as soon as you answer a question, you've got 10 more. If this is a Bronze Age burial mound, how old's the wall? Because the wall's certainly part of it. Or is it? Is the Bronze Age burial mound come first, and the plateau and the revetting of the banks? Was that done by the Bronze Age people? And then someone come along later and built the wall? Our leading archaeologist thought that. He thought, hang on, this was just here, and the Cistercians were building the wall for a different purpose, and they just respected it and went round it.
Why would the Cistercians build the wall then?
Well, Grange boundaries. They built huge ditches and banks all over South Wales to mark out the boundaries of their farms, because their land was given to them by the local lord, so they built these ditches and banks and walls everywhere. Yeah, but they didn't build our wall, did they? Because we've recently come up with a date for about 200 AD.
And how did you get that date?
That OSL or OLS. Hang on, I'll try and remember how to pronounce it. Stimulescence, optical luminescence stimulants, I think it's called. What they do is in the dark, they put a dark cover over themselves, they dig under the wall and they scrape out a bit of soil, and then they whack a tube into it, yeah, a piece of scaffolding pipe. You whack that in and it takes a core sample out of the wall in the dark. Yeah? So that bit of soil hasn't seen daylight since the wall was built. Yeah? They take it to a lab and they test the quartz in it. And the quartz, it's not daylight actually. The quartz is affected by the background radiation of the planet. Yeah? Everything is. There's a background radiation to the whole planet, yeah? And of course, once you cover something up, it affects that radiation signal in the quartz, because it's no longer being affected by the background radiation of the planet, yeah? So, by testing that quartz and exposing it to the light again, well, when it gets stopped, when the background radiation stops, yeah, it emits a certain signal, yeah, and they can calculate how long ago that signal changed.
Wow, that's incredible, yeah.
That's incredible bit of science.
Yeah.
We've got a bit of that, haven't we?
Yeah.
So the Ancient Cwbran Society commissioned Professor Dr. Tim Kennard, who's quite a well-known specialist in this area. He's on telly recently as well, working on the blue stones of Stonehenge. And he's tested a bit of the wall, and his preliminary tests come out with a date of 2nd century. He's doing more extensive tests now to pin that down and prove it, yeah, and we're waiting for those results to come back right now.
Who were the famous people around 200 AD then in this area?
Well, you tell me. The Silurs were here, weren't they? The Romans were here. The Romans were here 200 AD, and the Silurs were here. But this is Siluria, this is the Republic of Siluria, as the Silurs explain in carved stone in Cleon. This isn't the Roman Empire, this is the Republic of Siluria. There's a big difference.
They got rid of their own kings then, did they?
Well, the Romans talk about the Silurs as being this ferocious race that live in a ferocious landscape, and the Silurian War, the Romans refer to. The war went on for 20 to 30 years, we don't know how long, but it took the Romans 20 to 30 years from the time they landed in Britain to get and establish a fort in Cleon. No, Usk was the first one, sorry. They established a fort in Usk, yeah? But it took them 20 or 30 years of fighting the Silurians to get in here. Now you think about it, how many wars you know in human history that went on for 20 or 30 years?
Yeah.
Now, think about this, this is the Roman Empire you're fighting. This is a huge empire, one of the biggest empires, well, the biggest empire the world had ever seen in this part of the world anyway. And they had massive resources. They landed in Britain with 20,000 troops. This is a massive organisation, you know, that has huge resources. They take over England, they take out the biggest tribe in England, the Iceni, in the first battle. And then they come across to the Wye and they confront the Silures on the Wye. Yeah? Their first battle with them, the Romans lose the legion. So that halts them. Hang on a minute, something going on here. Yeah. Maybe there's a hint in the fact of what they called us were the people of the stones. Silurian means people of rock. People of rocks. Maybe we attacked them with slingshots or something. And, you know, one of those slingshots that they used to throw, they could go through armour. A pebble could go through steel. You know, the force he was being thrown, he was coming out of a sling like a bullet. And it's a deadly weapon. Maybe it's something to do with that. But either way, what we know about the Silures, they were basically a cavalry army, as far as we can ascertain, and they were very successful at fighting the Romans.
Guerrilla tactics, weren't they?
People say that the only way they could have done it was guerrilla tactics. The reason they say that, as far as I can understand, is because of their calculation of the population in Britain at the time. Yeah? They calculate that Britain didn't have that many people. Yeah? So if the Romans had an army of thousands of men, the British couldn't possibly front up to them, could they? If they didn't have a lot of population. So,
Unless they got that calculation wrong.
unless they got the calculation wrong. Now there is a few anomalies about people and calculations in this country, because as far as the pure science is concerned, the Silurians didn't exist. No tribal people in Britain exist in the Iron Age. There was no people here because we haven't found any burials. And if you haven't got any graves, then you can't have any people.
Unless they're all cremations. Or air burials.
Do you know what I mean? So as far as the pure science is concerned, the Silures didn't exist.
None in
But
Tibet
they
either
obviously
then,
did,
is there?
because the Romans wrote about them.
Yeah.
And the Romans had real problems fighting them because the Romans called it the Silurian War. And even when they got to Cleon in the end, and they captured their leader, they carried on fighting with them for another 20 years after that. All sorts of things went on. They lost Roman governors of Britain in that battle. They lost whole legions, you know. So something went on, right? So the academics will say, well, they must have been using some kind of guerrilla tactics, because how could they take on the Roman Empire? Or was it a huge population living here?
Yeah.
Was this the most powerful Iron Age tribe of Northern Europe? And it's quite possible, because the resources they had were fantastic, right? Because, you know, in South Wales you've got iron ore in abundance, yeah, which is the stuff of the Iron Age. You've got iron ore in abundance. If you're friendly with the Cornish, you've got tin. If you're friendly with North Wales, you've got copper, so which means you've got bronze in abundance, yeah, which is another huge resource in the Roman period. Even the Romans were buying tin from Britain and copper from North Wales, you know. Then you've got this fantastic farmland, because the plains of Gwent produce twice as much food as anywhere else in Europe. In fact, Britain produced the ground in Britain, the soil in Britain can produce twice the food of any other soil in southern Europe.
That's why the Vikings lived it here, didn't they?
That's why the Danes were here, exactly. Yeah. So you've got these huge resources, you've got abundance of water in all of Gwent.
Yeah.
You've got wonderful, abundant landscape. Gwent is one of the, it's a really strange place. Gwent is one of the few places that you could actually live off the land all year round. There's enough food here that just grows naturally for you to have bread and have all sorts of vegetables all year round. There's woods, yeah, you could oak trees, for example, you can make flour out of acorns. Do you know that?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
You can make a bread out of acorns. Beech,
Feed your pigs.
you can make soap out of beech leaves. Do you know that? Beech
Didn't know that one.
See these leaves? Yeah. The chemical that comes out of them if you soak them, called sophia. You can make soap out of it. The Romans didn't have soap until they came here. The British had soap. We were much cleaner. You could have had a huge population here, a very powerful, established kingdom. You know?
Did they go as far as the Glamorgans then, all the way down to Swansea?
As far as you don't know what the Silurians' lands were. I believe they went. This is my personal belief, yeah, and other people might argue this. I think Silurians' land were to Bath, yeah, to Gloucester, yeah, to Swansea, yeah, and to the south of Somerset. I think they had the whole area around the Severn Estuary.
Wasn't the area of
And
Cwbran?
that's another reason I think they were very rich and very powerful, because of the trade of the Severn Estuary.
It's the superhighway of that era, wasn't it? Yeah.
It's the first place you hit if you come round the coast of Europe.
Yeah. And that Vale of Glamorgan's just one large flat landscape, isn't it?
Massive,
Great for
massive farmlands,
grazing horses.
You know?
Because wasn't Cwbran? I know that was like a market town.
Yeah, it's
and that was
Siluria,
introduced.
the market town of the Silurians.
They tried to educate them, didn't they, the Romans, and to try and introduce coin, didn't they?
Well, yeah, there's no evidence of the Silurians having coin ever.
Right.
And general academia says, well, you can't really have a society without coin, and you haven't really got a culture. But that's just not true, is it?
No,
because
barter culture is going on now, isn't it?
Traded for thousands and thousands of years with no money.
Yeah.
You just establish the value of something compared to the value of something else, and you barter and you trade.
But that's what the Romans tried to do, though, didn't they?
They did introduce money. And the reason they introduced money was because the Romans, in truth, the Romans were the first real capitalists of Europe.
Yeah.
And if you've got money, it's much easier to regulate your taxes.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to regulate taxes if you haven't got a value system with money.
Yeah.
I mean,
Can't
you wouldn't.
maintain social order, can you?
No, you can't get control. You know, and the Roman farming system they introduced, the Trev system, was about control. It was about taxing the farmers, you know. And they come to Britain because they thought Britain was the centre of mineral wealth. When they got here, they realised that it was the breadbasket of Europe.
So these burial mounds, then, Rich, were they more associated with the Silures, or is it something that the Romans would also have? Because that would also help. You know, these ancient burial mounds, were these something that would often...
What we do know about burial mounds and the Romans is that it scared the shit out of the Romans.
So it's probably not Roman then?
The Romans were really superstitious people.
Yeah.
And they were scared of their own shadows.
Yeah.
For example, every time a Roman walked over water, he'd chuck a coin in it. Because he thought if you didn't, something terrible would happen to you.
Is that where the wishing wells came from?
Yeah, no, there's plenty of archaeologists or water archaeologists, loads of metal detectors that have got equipment that goes in water, because if they can find a crossing where the Romans walked across, there are loads of coins in the bottom of the river. You know, I think we got one in Cwbran actually, but no one's ever really looked at it.
What housing is behind there then?
So, there's an old farm up there. Penlan Gwyn's just up there. And another field or so away is Llanderfel.
Yeah, which is where the abbey was, yeah?
Yeah. Well,
you have to go there another time, Paul.
You're talking about... Llanderfel is really strange, because you're talking about those early monastic centres. They're not like abbeys. They're not like we think of.
Yeah.
This is you describe it better by saying it was the tribe of the saint. Yeah. Now, Derval in history is there's masses in history about Devereux. He's a big character in Welsh saints. Yeah, he had a reputation of being able to go into purgatory. Do you know what purgatory is?
Yeah, halfway house between heaven and
yeah, the Catholics believed in a halfway house between heaven and hell, and depending on the life you spent on earth,
go which one
it's
way
how
or the
long
other.
you spend in purgatory before you're either moved to heaven or hell.
Right.
Yeah, so it's not a nice place.
Yeah.
Not
So
a nice
it's
place to
the
be.
modern day equivalent of when my wife exiles me to the garage. I'm in purgatory there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm not quite in
No.
humane living condition.
That's
but
it.
You're halfway there.
Now, Devereux, in medieval history sort of mindset, the Christians, he could go into purgatory because he was a warrior saint, see, you know. He'd survived the Battle of Camelot through the strength of his spear, as the poem of the 7 survivors of the Battle of Camelot says. He could go into purgatory, grab your relative, and move him on to heaven.
Ah, right, okay.
Yeah. So he's worth a fortune, this guy. You know? So
And only he knows he's doing it.
to this saint were worth a fortune. We estimate there was about 6,000 pilgrims going to his shrine up there every April.
It
The
can't.
Saint's Day was the beginning of April, which is the beginning of the pilgrim season. So not only was he one of the pilgrim sites, he was the first one to go to. Yeah? And pilgrimage was a medieval form of tourism. You know, like we have package holidays now.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they didn't have package holidays.
They call it
in the
pilgrimage.
1500s. What they did have was pilgrimages, and you could pay a lump of money and go on pilgrimage and see other parts of the country and be escorted by monks, and you were say Christian, and then come to an end when the Cistercians turned up and put an end to all the belief systems of the early Christians.
A religious site then, from a long time ago.
And I think the wall is possibly some kind of temple site. And I think it's Druidic that is adopted by the Christians. Because we know there's no problem between Druidism and Christianity in this part of Britain.
No.
There was no battle, there was no war. It was an amalgamation of beliefs. Which makes perfect sense because the Druids believed in a one God. And the Druids also believed in the golden child, the sun child. The golden one, the anointed one, the Christed one. So when Christianity come along, I can't see how any Druid would have a problem with it. It's a similar belief system.
Yeah.
And Christianity is really pagan anyway. I mean, the Romans made sure of that, didn't they? That's what I'm researching. That's what I'm trying to establish. Right? You've got this temple site at the head of an enclosure of the Dowlais. Yeah? And that this quartz stone is massively significant in religious terms. Now we know that. It's an absolute fact. We know that they're taking lumps of white quartz to saint shrines all over Britain. They found them in Scotland, on the Isle of Mull. I've been there. There was a Celtic abbey up there, or early British Christian abbey up there. There's no source of quartz on the island, and the saint shrine was packed with these little white quartz. They'd taken them as oblations to the saint. We know that the early Christian burials in Cardiff, at Cwbran Cathedral, no grave goods in these early Christian burials, but a lump of white quartz. So we know by the early Christian, this white quartz has religious significance. Yeah? They built,
A lot of people are still worshipping crystals now, aren't they?
Yeah.
Or using crystals.
always been significant. We know the standing stones on Grey Hill across the valley, they're made out of quartz. We know the Harold stones, they're made out of quartz conglomerate. It's a common stone for standing stones in this area, yeah? And then we got the enclosures, and then they built a Christian abbey, an early British Christian abbey on the outcrop. Yeah? And then we got Bronze Age burial mounds just below it, and a wall made out of it. It all stinks of this whole area here being an early site of worship, yeah, and then later on becoming a Christian site of worship, yeah, and then falling into disuse when the Catholics turn up here and kind of outlaw all the Druidic Christian beliefs and the worshipping of saints. Because we know that happened as well. We know Henry VIII outlawed the worshipping of saints. They even took a statue of St. Devereux to Smithfield in London and roasted a Catholic friar on it for refusing to accept Henry VIII as the king, the head of the Christian church.
Wow.
You know? And that was a statue of St. Devereux.
This guy here.
Yeah.
Wow.
They took it not from this church. We think they took it from the North Wales church. We don't know for certain, but they certainly took it, and the locals tried to bribe them massively to leave it alone. They wouldn't. They took it up to Smithfield in London, and there's recording of a poster that they put up to advertise the burning of this Franciscan friar, Brother Forrest.
Wow.
Mad, isn't it?
Yeah. So how do you think they were moved in ancient times then?
Well, we had an archaeologist who was a specialist in walls come along, and he was looking at the walls in the woods, and I'll show you in a bit, and he suggested that the only way they had of moving large objects was with oxen. But oxen are a really expensive animal to maintain, and generally if you go back 1,000 years or more, you'd have one pair of oxen shared between about 6, 8 or maybe 10 farmers, because they don't have to feed in them, and then you'd only use your oxen when you ploughed, or when you wanted to pull a tree stump up or pull a heavy stone somewhere. Yeah? Now a team of oxen, they estimated, could work for about 6 hours, yeah, before they were exhausted, and 2 oxen were able to pull half a ton. Yeah? So if you've got a stone that's a ton, yeah, you need 4 oxen, yeah, to pull it, yeah, and they only can work for a certain amount of time. So if you've got a pile of stone, and I'm talking about up in the woods there's more stone than Stonehenge.
Wow.
You know, there's hundreds of tons of stone. Then you would need several pairs of oxen. Now to get several pairs of oxen, you would need to incorporate the labour of, what, maybe 70 farms?
Cool.
Or you would need to be immensely rich and powerful. Because not only do you need the oxen, you need hundreds of men.
Yeah.
And while those hundreds of men are working on your project to build your walls,
They're not farming.
They're not farming, they're not feeding their families. So not only do you have to feed the men, you have to feed their families as well. Otherwise they're not going to do it.
No.
In Wales,
Yeah.
in that area.
Well, even in Egypt, they don't think the
They wasn't
pyramids were
slaves.
built by
No,
slaves.
They know
No.
now that they were employed masons, wasn't
Yeah.
they? And they were a middle
They were
class.
doing it in the downtime when the winter period or whatever it was, equivalent of fallow.
And I'm sure there was something similar going on in the rest of the world, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's something really significant about the walls in this area and the other walls in the other areas across South Wales. There's something very significant about them, and they're not ordinary farm walls. We know that the archaeologists call them double flanked linear constructions, which simply means a linear construction means a wall, a building in a line. Yeah? But double flanked means it's faced on both sides.
All right.
Now to face a wall that incorporates stone that's nearly as hard as diamond takes some doing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And takes some time. And
Yeah.
why would you do that? Why do human beings spend lots and lots of time making something look pretty? What reasons has that been done in the past?
I'll just make a statement, didn't it?
Yeah, well,
Look who I am, look what I can do.
it's a statement of power, or it's a statement about belief.
Any of the ancient British Welsh words point in that direction?
Of power.
Yeah, like enclosure you were mentioning.
The mountain there is called the Mountain of Stone, which is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
On the end of that mountain there's a place called Cwbran,
right.
which is rather famous
Yeah,
and a huge mystery.
yeah.
Nobody knows what it's about.